Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final conference of Transform. Before we present what the project has created, and before we hear from our dear guests, youth workers who participated in this project, Milica coming from Serbia, Asia coming from Bulgaria, and Filareta coming from North Macedonia, I would like to briefly inform you about what this project was about and why it was created in the first place. So the beginning of the idea came from the reality that all of us youth workers do experience when working with young people. And that is the fact that many of young people do feel disengaged, do withdraw, do have a hard time connecting with others or building trust. The fact is that behind those behaviors, we actually, some of those behaviors, we do have trauma. However, the truth is that many of youth workers are not sufficiently equipped with knowledge and skills to respond and to identify trauma behind those behaviors. Now, Transform actually wanted to ask one practical question based on what we've seen in our professional practice from before. And the question is, how can youth workers and youth organizations actually become more trauma-informed? One thing that's extremely important to acknowledge at the beginning of this panel, but was extremely important to address throughout the project, is that although this is Transform, we do not have an intention to transform youth workers into therapists. So that was one great distinction we wanted to make from the beginning. The project itself built on three objectives. We will talk about them later on. The first objective focused on young people, the second one focused on youth workers, and the third one on youth organizations. So we had those three levels to address throughout the project. Now, if we're not transforming youth workers into therapists, what are we doing? We're actually trying to understand how trauma affects young people, to understand how to build safer environments, how to build sensitive response to those behaviors that have trauma behind, and how to set professional boundaries. Even more important, how to recognize when a professional mental health support is needed. So over the past 18 months, these three organizations, the City of Niš Debate Club from Serbia, our team from Bulgaria, and Lastovica from North Macedonia, developed outputs that we will introduce shortly. They have learned from each other through the process where those outputs were implemented, tested, and edited. So rather than simply showing you the outputs, I would like to invite all of you to enjoy the journey that we will introduce, and that journey, of course, as any other, had its obstacles, and we will actually discuss how the obstacles and the challenges have been overcome throughout the process. So, rather than asking our guests to start introducing themselves, I'd actually like to start with our host from Serbia and asking a general question. So, Milica, from your experience working with young people, what is one behavior that you've identified the adults would define as difficult or disengaged, but you wish adults would refer as different and disengaged, difficult?
Okay, let's see if we hear each other first. Hello everybody and welcome in my name as well. And thank you, Buena, for a wonderful introduction. To go on with the question, we've discussed throughout these 18 months many different types of behaviors that we've seen in young people. And I think that the one that we would distinguish as the most difficult is the young people that are quiet or disengaged. Because, for example, in the case of people who show some aggressive behavior or who are overachievers, maybe in some sense of the word, we know the rules and we know how to manage the situations. But with the ones that are quiet and that maybe do not feel open enough to share, this is where the challenge really begins. I wanted actually to explain you from the trauma lens very briefly why also sometimes this disengagement happens, and it has to do a lot with biology. So you can imagine the brain as having multiple layers, and the brain works bottom up. So the bottom part of the brain is the reactive brain, and something that happens very often not willingly. So this is the way how we react with environment. How we go up, we have more complex parts of the brain that involve emotional interaction with the surrounding. And at the top, the most complex one, which is cortex, where decision making comes into place and where critical thinking also comes. The thing is that with people who experience trauma or some traumatic event, very often the information that comes through a reactive brain does not reach the cortex. So this is why they do not know how to react in certain situations, or very often what happens is overreaction because of the accumulated stress and biology response. And this is why it's very important that we as youth workers, when we see that somebody is constantly disengaged, we ask a question, why is this happening? And not to jump to assumptions that this is because of that reason that we've imagined.
Thank you, Milica. Now, you've clearly explained biological background of disengaged young people, or should I put it like this, disengaged. We do mention trauma a lot today, and what is one thing about trauma that's not biological that all of us here should better understand? I'd like to ask Asya about that. So what should youth workers understand more about trauma, apart from the biological perspective?
Hello. So the first thing which most of the youth workers who attend our training underlined that was the most valuable knowledge which they had was that trauma is not the event itself, but the impact which that event had on the person's psychic or nervous system, and also the ability to cope. So two people can experience relatively the same thing and be affected in a different way. So yeah, to underline not the event itself, but the impact of this event.
Thank you so much, Asya. I think we're getting an idea of what's behind the trauma and how the trauma is being demonstrated through different variety of young people. What I'm curious about is how it works with organizations. How it works with organizations in a sense that we do see that some young people are disengaged and do not find youth organizations, let's say, quite interesting to join or to engage themselves in the process. My question is whether it's because of the young people who, as we've talked about, do have certain behavior behind or show certain behavior, or are youth organizations accessible enough to embrace all those different behaviors that we've mentioned?
Hello from my name to everybody. As I understand, the question is, there is an open question about how the youth organizations accepting and thinking about the young people with trauma. And they usually use the sentence, hard to get, it's too complicated, they're not disciplined enough. What I think from my own experience with working with young people with trauma, I have experienced that, first of all, I kind of find the difficulty with organizations because most of the time they're, let's say, on the first place is bureaucracy, on the second place is the people. If they have, how to say, a strict schedule to appointment, they have a lot of papers to do, and trauma as a chaos with young people are kind of distrust to the system. So instead of maybe organizations should work more on to be open and to think out of the box, beside the schedules and everything and discipline, to think about the young persons who are already going through trauma, how to convince them to openly collaborate.
So it's actually about changing the priorities, right, from
Yes.
bureaucracy towards people.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, if there is one sentence that all of you would like to share about convincing all of the people here and the ones online about why it's important to be trauma-informed, what is that one sentence you'd like to share?
I would like to say that trauma-informed youth work matters because it creates safety, and without safety, people cannot learn, cannot grow, and cannot participate. So this is why it is important for me.
So safety here, Milica?
I would like here to make a distinction and clarification about what trauma-informed framework actually means, because when you hear the word trauma-informed, you think that maybe this is only for people who have experienced trauma. Now, I would not like to go into the details how many people have ever experienced trauma in their lives, but trauma-informed care framework is actually for everybody. What matters here and why it's so important is that it should be introduced to every classroom, every activity room, anywhere where young people are, and it's an ultimate language with which we can actually read and include young people in the activities that we are organizing.
Thank you very much. So we can actually say raising awareness would be your sentence, right? Thank you.
Well, I will add something very similar. It's when you work with young people with trauma, I think the organizations should be more sensitive, because young people are very sensitive and intuitive. So in order to touch and reach to them, we need to, everybody, to understand, and I mean adults and young people also, to understand that the trauma is not a personal deficit. It's we need to find the source of the wound, the original wound, so we can heal, and it's a long road, and to have work in progress, as I may say. So in one sentence, we need to address that trauma is not a personal deficit, and we need to find the original wound.
So we can say it's a journey process, just like this project, and we should all participate in it, right? Thank you very much. And now we're moving to the objectives. So as I mentioned previously, the objectives that were established at the beginning of the project start with young people first, and I think what Filareta was previously saying is that the priorities in each organization, and as we've heard from Milica, school and everywhere should be changed so that we actually start with young people first and be more sensitive towards them, and then move to bureaucracy. However, the same thing with the project. We start with certain objectives and then we build the journey throughout. The first objective was defined so that it sees young people. And then we moved to youth workers and ended up with youth organizations. So I'd like to ask a few questions about objectives. Filaretta, from your personal experience, what actually makes a young person build trust and want to engage, feel safe enough to engage? We've heard that safety is extremely important in the process.
You meant safe to start to discuss and work on his own trauma as a young person. I think to feel from the opposite side support, openness, to feel that maybe through conversations from I don't know how to say exactly, through personal experiences, but human experiences, to talk about their own human experiences maybe, and then the conversation started to go deeper and more direct. To feel, not to speak about the trauma through definitions, through frame, to speak through personal experiences, and that's the point where the other side feels safe to open. Because when someone is in an impact of trauma, most of the time they feel like they're the only one in the world, or something happens only in their head, or there's something big. But when they hear it from the opposite side, that hey, that happened to the other one. It's not like I'm not the only one. Then they kind of build trust and connection and strong bond to open. And also, it's not the same for everybody. So we need a lot of patience and a lot of consistency and time, and to be there for them, to be on the right time for them, to feel whether they're open to talk, or maybe they want just to hear, or maybe they're just trying to feel if there is something that remind them through conversation of their own trauma, or they're just feeling safe to open and talk, from my own experience.
Thank you very much, and what you're saying actually reminded me of being seen and being involved in human interaction. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm also curious, we're now moving to our second objective, so youth workers, and I'd like to pass this question to Asya. So youth workers are not therapists, and this is not what this project intended to do, to transform them into one. But when a young person is affected with trauma, and now we have a good, well-informed, let's say, youth worker, how will that youth worker actually recognize that the young person is having or has been having trauma, or has had trauma, etc.?
To start with the therapist side, I would like to say that our intention was not to create therapists out of youth workers, but trauma-informed youth workers. So they should not start diagnosing a person. They should not analyze their childhood experiences, and even they should not try to heal the trauma if they have been shared something like that. This is not their professional profile. So they need to know how to refer a person to professional help if they have information, and if they have the trust of this person. They need to know how to recognize if there is a distress, if there is a change in the behavior, because when they know the people, the young people they work with, they will notice if there is a change, and they will know that behind this change there is something happening. So as trauma-informed care insists on switching the question from what is wrong with this person to what might be happening to this person in order to react in that way. So this shifts the mindset from being a little bit defensive towards being curious, and protects you to take a behavior of a young person personally, that they're, for example, attacking you, or if they are unmotivated to think that you're not interesting, and that they are not interested in the activities. So you should know that behind this behaviors can be something else. And what can they simply do is to stay consistent for the young people, to keep their promises, to show up when they say that they will be there. So to be human, as Filareta said.
Yeah, I'm listening to what you were saying, and one thing strikes me the most. It's the fact that we usually do tend to quickly come to conclusions instead of just listening, observing, and trying to understand what's happening on the other side. Thank you very much. Milica, let's go to the third objective here, and it's about youth organizations. I believe that most of youth organizations would at certain points say that they're safe. I worked in school environments, so formal education environment for 15 years, and that was something that I listened a lot. We're a safe environment, it's the kids or the parents. Now, I do have a question for youth organizations. How can a youth organization identify whether it's safe enough? How do we have justification of that safety?
So first of all, I would like to mention here that both internal and external reflection is necessary. So it's not enough to just discuss with your colleagues and have some tools and measurement systems of how do you feel safety in your organization looks like, but it's actually important to involve the young people in the whole process. So when we are creating activity, the co-creation part is what matters the most. We should always ask them for the opinion and how do they feel in the moment. And then, of course, there are many tools and evaluations and so on that actually support the administrative part of the process, where we can evaluate how did they really felt after the activity and even during the activity. So going to young people and asking them, do they feel safe about their participation and engagement is more important than do we felt that we created safe space for them. And this is sometimes tricky because when you invest all that work and effort in building activities that would provide what young people need, it's very difficult sometimes to just see activities failing or not being sufficient for young people enough. We sometimes take it as a personal failure, but really we just need to think from another perspective and take it from the lens of somebody who may have some other issue, problem, or is just simply having a bad day. This also can happen.
Thank you very much. I believe you've made a great introduction to our next slide and discussion about DIC assessment tool. And we'll go deeper into that, but you've also given an introduction to my next question, which is, which of these three did you personally find the hardest to achieve throughout 18 months of this project? Milica, you can start and then we can share the floor.
Yes, well, for us, the hardest part somehow was about changing the organizations.
So the third objective, right?
Yes, it was the third one, because it involves a lot of complex processes, it involves a lot of people. One thing is working on individual level, attending a training, and then have some learning outcomes that come from it. This is something that is very easily achievable. Sometimes it gets lost, but at least some shape and form of that stays. When it comes to young people, as Filareta said, there are many ways of engaging them. It's just being open and also thinking outside of the box, but changing the organization with all the procedures and people and motivation, I would say the most. It's really something that for us was very difficult to address.
So I'm curious, I see actually two levels here. The first one being the people, and then the second one being administration and bureaucracy. So which one was harder?
I would say it starts with people.
Okay. Yeah. We've defined that one. Okay, Filareta.
Well, something very similar what Milica said. To say shortly about organizations. When we worked in a training, I was one of the participants last year in Niš. We were very highly motivated. We had a very good time. We were focused on what we worked on the trauma. we had a wonderful experience. We had a lot of deep exercises, and we were focused on that. So when we started to engage in our town, in our organizations, it was not difficult, but very different. And with time, I figured out that maybe it's better not to be, it cannot be copy-paste, because the people are different, the environment is different, the young people have other prioritized things. The adults also, they are open to work, but when they get the exercises, for example, they're kind of closed off, or don't want to feel their feelings, or to be engaged, or because I felt it's not about the tools, it's about how do we control, or is it familiar for me or not, can I try or not. So I think the answer to this question is difficulties in organizations more.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you is that maybe the solution would be flexibility and starting with adaptability as the priority, because...
Yes, so we kind of, with our team, with our team together, we find out different ways, the same methods and tools, but with kind of micro actions, through smaller exercises, how to open, how to reach to them, and again, it was with through human experiences. Let's say, let me tell you about my experience, and then the exercise start from there.
You, by the way, actually answered one of the questions I have prepared, because I was curious about how the multiplier effect worked later on after the training, but we'll focus a little bit more on that afterwards. So Asya, what about you? Which one was the hardest? Is it the third objective as well?
Yeah, of course, because it takes a longer time, a lot of effort, a lot of reflection, a lot of coordination between the policies, the people who are involved, who have to be trained, so it's a lot of work. And apparently it is the hardest part. Also, I would like to mention about the youth workers, because it depends on their motivation, and if they are not motivated, or if they don't value the trauma-informed principles, then it can be also hard.
Yeah, I think you mentioned consistency, right? Yeah, so it's applicable, yeah, throughout all of these objectives. Thank you very much, and I'm going to move now to the assessment tool, which is one of the outputs that the project created. And the assessment tool was actually used in order to identify how safe the youth organizations are. So we've heard from Violetta that some of the things worked pretty well in the training, and I'm sure they worked even better on the paper, right? Or a PowerPoint presentation, but then reality shows something else. So I'm curious about the assessment tool. So you've used it in your organization or in your local environment. What seemed to be perfect on paper, but then did not work that easily when implemented with the assessment?
It was the practical exercises when we all have to feel something or to be someone else. Let's say we're from the same region, so I'll say one proverb, I'll try to translate on English, to put ourselves in other shoes at least for 5 minutes. I think that was the most difficult exercise from my experience and what I've been working through young and also young people. And it was the no, the resentment, the losing control, fear, feeling, going to the process or in the situation, because we had some exercises with scenarios and everything, how to feel something else. And I think that was the practical exercises when we have to feel and to show and to feel ourselves shortly, to have link with ourselves and to be authentic. That was the hardest part.
But I also believe that that's one of the takeaways from today's panel, that we should try to find ourselves in other shoes, right? And yeah, and it's also the third-person perspective on ourselves. seeing how we actually deal with something that we can say is easy, right? Theoretically, but then practically does not work that well. Thank you very much. And when you look, Asya, at, let's say, the first version of the training and assessment tool, we're going to talk a little bit more about the training as well. Which of those things did not seem quite right now that you have become fully trauma-informed youth worker? And then you observe them and you see, oh, this does not work. It worked at the beginning, now it doesn't.
Well, when we started to create the assessment tool, it was a very difficult process because things like that exist but on a different level, not in the youth work sphere. So we, as a construction, we took the 6 pillars of the trauma-informed care as a guidelines, and we built the assessment tool based on that. And what we tried to do was not to oversimplify it and not to create it as a simple checklist, because it loses its meaning like that. So the first version was a little bit complicated, very long. Some of the sentences were too long and maybe having too many questions inside one question, which was cleared out after the first feedback which we had. So the final result, I think, is pretty professional. What we really try to do is to keep the psychological terms used correctly, but not to go very psychologically
deep into the theory, into psychology, right?
We also put a section with dictionary in order for the users to know which terms we are using and what we mean by them. So yeah, this was our main concern. And after 3 times changing the assessment tool, I think the final result is more complicated, as a length, but in the same time we covered all the spheres, I think, and it looks very professional, and I believe it will be useful and easy to go through, so the organizations will be able to use it, I hope.
So applicable, maybe, professional and applicable. Thank you so much. Milica, I have a question for you regarding the assessment tool and its application. Was there a moment where, for example, something worked perfectly in Serbia but did not work in North Macedonia or Bulgaria, or vice versa, that you've noticed it just does not work?
So I have a feeling that the motivation for our project came from the common gap that we've identified in all the countries, and we've talked about this along the way and also at the end of the process as well. We pretty much had common challenges and common successes. I would not say that the challenges that we experienced were based on the local or national level. They were really up to the individual readiness to implement the tool. So here we can see very different approach from different youth workers and also from different organizations. We've concluded that in our area we have very, very similar mindsets when it comes to trauma-informed care, but also administrative and governing parts at the national level, which can produce also additional work for us as organizations. And ultimately we understood that this made it maybe easier for us, because having all these common challenges helped us easier go through them, and then enabling us to in the future hopefully scale up on some other national realities where maybe the policies and practices are more trauma-informed friendly.
So you've noticed that you're dealing with same challenges, or let's say challenges, but different ones, so you were there for each other, and it worked pretty well. I'd like now to move to a roadmap, and by the way, if you can approach QR code, do scan and do inform yourselves a little bit more about these outputs. So I would like to move to the roadmap, and would like to go to Filaretta. Filaretta, we have plenty of materials here. We had assessment tool roadmap. We'll see there's there are training materials and so on, and it might be overwhelming for the audience here and online. So if there's like one thing that you'd like to steal from all these materials and apply in your daily practice and share that one with our audience here, what would that be?
Well, that's a hard question because it's only one.
We've heard one activity.
Yes, I've mentioned one activity, and I practice that exercise with my young people. Should I repeat myself?
No.
Shortly? No.
Anything
That's
else?
the one
So that's the one that you'd like to.
There were a lot of good exercises, really good. And during the training, we were very deeply. It was very deeply and intensive. But after the training, we figured out what happened, and we needed a time to accumulate that as a knowledge. Trust. The exercise, the first exercise that we had, I will be short. It's based on the trust, and we didn't know each other, all the participants. We were playing the game where we were going to the road with closed eyes. The road was with strings, and the people who we just met 5 minutes ago, let's say, they were leading us and guide us to the particular goal. So it was very naive when it started, but we kind of built a strong bond to help to everybody, and I would say the audience should try. It sounds very easy, but when you close your eyes and you have someone that you don't know and they're saying, turn a little left, turn a little right, go straight, it's very interesting. The process inside, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, so we should let it go, right? Thank you so much. Milice, we surely have people here in the room who have never been involved in maybe youth work or trauma-informed care, and we are sharing the QR codes for them to scan. Which of the outputs would you suggest to check first or to focus on the most?
So all of them kind of build up on each other. This was the idea throughout the project, but the one that really gives basic awareness and knowledge is a podcast that was created throughout the project, and I would distinguish this one because in 12 episodes that we've structured, you can very clearly and in a simple way with the experts that were guests in the podcast understand what trauma is, what is trauma-informed care, all the pillars were addressed throughout the episodes. So this is somehow the basics that you need to cover before you go to the assessment tool. Like, of course, like if you know some basic of the trauma-informed care, you would maybe take a glimpse on the assessment tool, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to be trauma-informed when you don't know what is trauma-informed. So this resource gives you more information on everything that was covered throughout the other outputs, and I think this is a great beginning.
So podcast, right? We'll talk about that later on. Thank you very much. Asia, we know that Erasmus Plus does a great job, like the projects within Erasmus Plus, they do a great job with producing excellent outputs, right? How do we ensure that those outputs, especially these ones, are used and they live after the project's end?
I believe that before starting to produce any outputs, there should be a need behind them. So they should be usable and to be based on real needs. That's when the youth workers will reach out and check out and see how they can implement the resources. And the other thing which I think is very important is to be understandable how to use the tools. Because we have a lot of tools, some of them are really complex, and you want to to use it, but you don't understand what is behind, and you cannot follow easily, and you quit because we don't have the time and so much effort to put. And yeah, so two words: usability and understandability.
Thank you very much, and support and consistency, right? To add a few more, yeah. Okay, so we've mentioned training course and then local training format, and if you recall what Filaretta previously said, so it started pretty well. I mean, it was, let's say, time and energy consuming to participate in the activities in the training, but also self-consuming. And then there was a process of accumulation, processing what happened, and then there was a local training format. And Filaretta actually explained how the process worked, and that there are always certain barriers, obstacles we cannot predict, but the best way to respond to those is flexibility and adaptability. But I do have one question that can move away from Filaretta's head because she already took the show from me. And so we've been hearing those 6 pillars of trauma-informed care: safety, trustworthiness, collaboration, empowerment, voice and choice, cultural responsiveness. So let's say you girls can keep only one. Which one would you keep?
For me, it would be the first pillar about safety, because without safety we cannot build on the other pillars. Without safety you cannot build trust, collaboration, so I would keep that pillar.
Thank you very much, and we've been hearing safety a lot, right? So yeah, it's a
maybe
fundamental.
it's the most important part in this trauma-informed care.
Thank you very much, Milica.
Yeah, for me it's the same. We've talked about this with Asia many times during the process, and for the same reasons and many others, safety is the same pillar that I would keep.
Thank you, Filaretta.
Well, for me, it would be a voice and experience, because we need to hear each other, we need to speak loud, and we need to share our experience, our human experiences.
Excellent, and they are interconnected, as we can see, right? They cannot go alone, just like the full process. Now, apart from what we've heard from Filaretta about the multiplier or local application of what was learned in the training itself, I'd like to ask the first moment when you've noticed. Do you recall that first moment when you noticed that it's going to be really hard? And was there a moment like, I don't know what to do now? Like when you started a multiplier, like local community?
Yes.
You remember it? Can you share it? Is it okay?
It's okay, yes, I can share it. It was very scary. It was very scary because I didn't want to have expectations. I was working a lot, we were preparing, the whole team, and I was thinking that nothing can surprise me. And then the first exercise, which was practical, beside the papers and the PowerPoint presentation and everything, and the theoretical part was perfect. And then when the exercises came, I came to the wall. They just didn't. So as I say,
Would you say they were disengaged?
Yes, they would quickly shut down. They quickly disengaged. So I was very upset. I hope they didn't notice. But I was kind of trying to do something, and then when you're it was intense energy, and then immediately we were like little squirrels and making one decision all together, the 3-4 girls of us. And we were just doing through micro actions. That's when we decided that we should use a little less to contact them, to open them, to start to work. And it was good. So I don't want to go into details, but it was good. It was a good way to connect with them.
So no great
It was not only
expectations.
just young people.
Yeah.
It was and adult people and youth workers and in educational formal or non-formal. It was from different part of our professions. And from my experience, I would say you can always be surprised. Even if you think that you saw everything and that you do it 100 times that exercise with different people, there is always something that is.
So, no great expectations, be prepared for everything and less is more, right? That's a takeaway.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, Milica, what was the part you felt least confident about when applying the activities from the training course on a local level?
So for us it was a similar experience as Filaretta. You never know who will enter the room and how their motivation will be. So this is where we were having this confidence shaken a bit. But once that we've known the groups a bit better and we saw that really who came were the people very much interested into getting to know how to implement sessions with young people in trauma-informed way, but also how to use other tools that we produce, we got a bit more empowered. And the biggest fear somehow always is that the result is going to end on the graveyard of results as many others before. We tried immediately to engage youth workers with the tools that we've developed, so it's not only at the level of exercises, but it's also interaction with the tool at the moment.
Thank you very much. I'm curious about this multiplier. So we've been mentioning it a lot in Erasmus Plus environment. That's a must, right? But who's the multiplier actually? How would you define that person and how do you feel in the role of being the multiplier?
The simple role is just to deliver knowledge to the audience, but every time it goes differently because the groups are always different, they have different background, different interests, so it happens that a multiplier becomes like a living thing, and you build your ideas and knowledge based on the group and their questions, because they ask different questions and you think this is interesting. They have different reflections. So what I can say about the multiplier is not simply that we deliver the knowledge or the products, outputs which we created, but when this energy of the group starts to build on these results, then we can really reflect and grow the outputs from the reflections of the group.
So it's actually the moment where the one who is multiplying becomes the learner itself. So it's more of a multiplayer than multiplier.
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you very much. And we've already heard from Milica about the podcast, TikTok. This time works for trauma-informed care. So I'd like to see the audience actually here by raising their hands who has listened to a podcast that's, let's say, psychologically driven, so the topic of psychology, trauma in the past year. Okay, thank you very much. We cannot say half, but we're almost there. So, how did this idea of podcast came to life? Like, this is the question for any of you. How did you decide to start with podcast? Is it because they happen to be popular, or you believe that this is how the story, because we've heard from Milica, you might want to take this one, because you mentioned that they should start from podcasts. So what is about the podcast that is so appealing?
So yes, we've done our research about the mediums where young people are the most, and this is one of the reasons why we went for the podcast. But it was also about the format that it offers, in the sense that we knew from the very beginning that we want to bring people who are also from the field of education, of psychology, so we can also get some more information regardless of the experience and expertise that organizations have. We thought this can be a very good way to actually engage the well, primarily youth workers, but then also young people who are interested about trauma, mental health, and so on, because these podcasts can be useful also for the people regardless of the organizational background. And also talking about accessibility, podcast was one of the tools that everybody can access. It's on Spotify. You can go and go with the pace that it's actually good for you over the resources. You can start with episode 1, you can go to the 5th, or repeat it as many times as you want. So the point is that we've tried to find a way that everybody can go to when they want knowledge, and they can actually learn at a pace best suited for them.
And now I'm curious about one thing. So thank you, Milica, because you've explained the reasons why the podcast was made, the accessibility part, everything seems easy. I'm curious about the issue that Asya has mentioned before, which is vocabulary. So how do you ensure that it's not like theoretical, psychological lecture being transmitted through podcast, but it's accessible in that way to young people? Whoever wants to take. Mm-hmm.
Well, I did the podcast with my colleague, Andrei Pascalov, and we started very professional and very like we're gonna do this through definition and everything, like we made a plan, and then because he's a psychologist, he started to ask me some very basic, normal questions, and I just started to open myself. So after we finished, I realized that through sharing my own experience, the subject went deeper and deeper. I felt very good after that. And according to my experience, I would say that the main part, the main thing, the main tool that I think is important is to share human experiences, not through definition, speaking through yourself, speaking from your experience, your own experience, how you feel, what you went through, and when you say it, and in the other side is listening to you, you will understand that you're not the only one. It can happen, it's normal, and you can go on through the road of healing, let's say, or it's a long road, but it's a work in progress, but it can be very successful.
So what I'm getting from your answer, Filaretta, is that if we can compare like formal education to non-formal education, and then formal being definitions and non-formal being activities like the one with the one when you build trust, right, with the people who you met for the first time. Would you say that podcast was more like non-formal, and that is what is appealing to young people instead of sharing definitions? So it's the approach where they are not aware that they're learning, but they're learning a lot.
Yes.
That's the
yes,
catch.
exactly.
Thank you very much, and we're now moving to the outreach strategy. And again, similar to Multiplier, one of the things that is a must within Erasmus Plus projects. Now, the question I have for all three of you, and you can all answer, is what's the fastest way for a youth worker to lose trust or engagement? We've been hearing that youth workers do need to feel motivated because there are so many obstacles when the dissemination starts, and implementation in this case when we've heard from Asya. So to sum up the question very easily, so what is not the best way or the fastest way to build motivation but to lose motivation or trust? So whoever would like to answer.
What I would like to mention is that the fastest way you lose the trust with the young person is when they feel the trust towards you and start sharing some personal things and start raising some concerns or whatever they share, they feel vulnerable, and if the actions after that does not show that you have listened to them, they will feel unheard, unseen, and they probably would feel that probably you lied to them in a way. So when a person feels vulnerable, this means that they open up a lot to you, and after that you should not ruin this trust. So this, I think, is the fastest way to lose their trust.
Feel betrayed, right?
Yeah,
That's the best recipe for losing trust. Okay. Anyone else would like to add something? Okay, and then we're here, and as you can see, the project itself built a website where you can find all the outputs and everything we've talked about today. And throughout the project, as we've mentioned, there were moments of development, moments of learning, moments of feeling stuck and then getting out of it, testing and improving. Now here we come sharing the materials, awareness materials, podcasts, and so on. And then here's the social media. And I'm not going to ask about the reach and how was it, how many people did click. And I'm curious about trauma on social media. And anyone can answer, what is one thing you wish social media was informed, let's say, better when trauma is considered? And I'm asking that question because I've heard, and I forgot who was a person mentioning at the beginning, that we do make conclusions, we do give diagnoses and so on, and I believe the great deal of that comes from social media. So one thing you would change about trauma on social media, and you have changed with your outreach strategy. Who'd like to?
Well, if you want to go for no, yeah, go for it. Then I do.
Okay, so we have different profiles. Of course, algorithms also bring us different things our ways. But what I've noticed is that very often trauma is declared as something huge that needs to happen to you, and only then you experience trauma. But really, there are different types of trauma, different people reacting to these events and trauma regulations. So in that sense, I would like to somehow make social media understand that trauma is also embedded in daily life. It can be also easily overcame sometimes. It can also be having bigger implications, but it's important to acknowledge that not only a huge accident that happened or something similar is trauma, but there can also be some smaller ones. So we actually listen to people when they share their traumas with us and are aware that this also can, for them, be one of the biggest problems.
So we should not be traumatized by trauma, right?
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Thank you. Would you like to add something?
Actually, this was the thing which we were discussing together. So yeah, not to underestimate trauma and not to I don't know how to say, overestimate it. So again, I will repeat the thing which I said at the beginning. It's not about the event, but the impact which it has. So be aware and not judge. So be curious maybe and be human.
Thank you. I do also have a question regarding scrolling. How did you ensure that your awareness material on social media was not just one of those that were scrolled by young people? Any strategy that you developed would like to share?
Okay, if you remember, we're here. We've tried to make the materials in a way that people first understand the importance of them. So once that they understand that they are actually important and useful, they stop for a moment and pay some attention. And then another thing is that sometimes it's needed for people to feel a need for some specific output. So this is also a perspective from which we started to make people understand that, you know, and when they're scrolling over funny videos and so on, they come to the Transform post, very clear visual identity, very beautiful colors, thanks to Ogi. Yes, he was our visual logo creator and all of that. So we've tried to distinguish ourselves in the sea of different content that can be found, and that really the experience that we've shared, it's real, that the tools are useful, that can be applicable, and everything before that we've mentioned.
We've been hearing need again, and we've been hearing the approach, like non-formal, so human approach. So if we sum up, that would be something that is needed by social media and in the youth work as well. Thank you very much. So I would just like to show that we do have LinkedIn Learning and Sharing group here, and I guess that is one of the excellent modes for staying in touch after the project, right? So let's say we gather ourselves here, same place, 1 year from now. What is one thing you wish that the Transform project brought to you and to all of the people here and online listening to us? Diloretta, would you like to go?
Well, difficult question to answer in short. I think that 1 year from now, I would like to feel and to see that all of us are more open, with more support and love to each other. I would love to see the connection, to the real hearing, the loud voices about what's going on inside of us and outside of us, to connect and feel that we're all one and we're experiencing the same feelings and the same trauma, and we are on the same road, and more working on ourselves with particular tools, more workshops were very helpful, more intense workshops, more working on ourselves, and I would like to finish. I have one of my favorite directors. It's connected with my primary profession. It's Stevo Žigon, and past few months I had some experiences privately that reminds me on his one and only sentence. It was, I would say it in Serbian, "Čoveku treba čovek." And now in English, a person needs a person, a man needs a man. So I think it's very deep sentence, and it says everything about all that I've been talking about.
Thank you very much, and it clearly actually brings us back to that activity you mentioned from the training road, and then trust, and then people, and we cannot go that road alone. We need others to support us on that road. Thank you very much. Milica, what about you?
Yeah, for us, and we've also talked, we would like to see organizations actually using the tools that we've developed. This will also have an impact on young people that we are working with, and we really would like to start with ourselves. So seeing ourselves actually implementing all these strategies and tools that we've built in the future, this is something that we would like to see maintained.
Thank you very much. So application, and you've done an excellent work with all the materials, all the outputs. I was impressed, I have to say. And then Asya?
Pretty much the same. 1 year from now, I would like to see our organizations have gone through this work, at least partially, because it's a long process to become trauma informed. And also I would like to see how we inspire the other organizations to become trauma informed.
Thank you very much. So I think this is a perfect spot where we should finalize our introduction of the Transform project. We've discussed why it was created in the first place, why it was developed, what are the outputs that were created, how they influenced local communities and youth workers here as well. And I'm sure that here in this room and online, we are having people who are coming from different backgrounds, different professions, many of you being youth workers as well, and some of you have been challenged with similar challenges working with young people who had trauma behind their behaviors. And so I'm inviting all of you to take the floor now and to ask a question or challenge some of the statements you've heard here, or perhaps share a brief example from your own professional practice that can help all of us here learn. So thank you for being excellent and attentive listeners. Now we'd like to hear you speak and take the floor. So who would like to go first? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, after working across Serbia, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, what did you find that the youth workers struggle with or have problems with, regardless of where they're from?
Youth workers can do a lot of the things which are trauma-informed intuitively. So some of the things they already know how to deal with. I don't know, do you have any?
Yeah, I would say that when we think about the environments where we come from, trauma is not something that is really talked about. Youth workers, same as other people, are not informed about it enough. And I think this basic start for them, it's something that is difficult when you are actually introduced to the new topic and to new way of work. So yeah, I think awareness is where we start and where we actually lack at the moment.
And one more thing, that at the first, the youth workers may feel that they are pressured to become therapists, which is not the case, and we wanted to underline this, because they don't have the responsibility to heal anyone. They have the responsibility to provide the safety, which we talked about, the trustworthiness. So what can be struggling for them is that to be trauma-informed also applies a lot of new skills, new knowledge, for example, de-escalation. So the youth workers should be really motivated in order to become really trauma-informed.
And one more, if I may. You talked about disengaged young people or overreacting, overachieving, but coming to these days, I've seen a lot of people struggling with, I think it's called high-performance depression, where they seem like they are normal, they are engaged, they laugh, they have fun with others, but then they go home and they shut off completely. So is that also something that you would like to introduce to be part of the study, or to also help the youth workers to find a solution to help those guys too?
Of course, trauma responses can be a variety of things. You can never say this is because of trauma. Also, trauma-informed care, as Milica said, is also applicable to everybody. So a youth worker is not obliged to recognize trauma, but it will be good for them to recognize that there is changes in the behavior. So if there is a high achiever who shuts down when they go back home, probably, I don't know if this will be noticed by the youth worker at the spot. Maybe they, through these trauma-informed approaches, they creating all these layers. Maybe this young person will come and share the experiences which they have with the youth worker, so they will have a safe spot within them to be able to share and to be vulnerable, as we said. So from this starting point, then actions can be made, I think.
Anyone else? Any other questions coming from the audience? Okay. I guess that if there are no other questions, then I guess this would be a perfect spot to end this panel. However, because many of you might feel that you'd like to talk to some of our youth workers individually and discuss a little bit more about their answers, do feel free to do so for the next 10-15 minutes, right? We're having that time so you can inform a little bit more about something specific that you're not feeling safe to share in front of everyone, but would like to do that individually. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you, Asia. Thank you, Milica. Thank you, Filoretta. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you all who are online following this panel live. Do not forget that we're having in Serbia the City of Niš Debate Club, Lastovica, North Macedonia, and Art in Bulgaria. So if you do have questions about the outputs, would like to engage, you know the address, and as you know, there is a website, so feel free to use the materials. I certainly will. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wants to stay, network a bit, explore the outputs and the further materials, you have them throughout the room, so you're very welcome. Thank you.